Dear audience, I'm Kalpesh from NASSCOM. A very warm welcome on behalf of NASSCOM. Thank you for amazing response to NASSCOM Tech Innovation Conclave. This year, we are organizing this event on a virtual platform with multiple features. There are over 65 plus exhibitors with virtual showcase. We have tagged these exhibitors basis their capabilities such as IoT, AI, analytics, retail tech, e-commerce, etc. Please do visit the virtual showcase. One of the common concerns about virtual events is networking. We have enabled networking on this platform. You can send connect requests to other delegates, speakers, and start conversing with them. Hope you will enjoy our sessions, virtual showcase, and networking opportunities over next 2 days. On behalf of NASSCOM, I would like to thank NTT Data, Turip Technologies, Office Depot Compicom, Metro Global Services, and Avalara as our sponsors. We will now start with the keynote session on future of work. The technology sector has grown, generating high returns for shareholders and investors. There are several immediate shifts as well as global mega trends that offer new opportunities and challenges which need to be thought of now. New delivery models, workforce of the future, the digital consumer, emerging ecosystems are themes that will affect the industry in a big way. I am pleased to invite Kim Curley, Vice President, Workforce Readiness Consulting, NTT Data, to present the keynote. Kim has spent her career making business better for humans everywhere, focused on the human side of business, enabling leaders and their organizations to do more, do better, and to thrive through change. As the Workforce Readiness Consulting Practice Leader, Kim leads consultants whose mission in life is to help leaders and their organizations do more, do better, and to thrive through change. Named an NTT Data game changer for her dedication to client and team success, Kim is also a founding member of Women Inspire NTT Data, the company's first employee resource group. Over to you, Kim.
Thank you for the terrific introduction, and thank you for the invitation to be here with NASSCOM today. I hope you are all enjoying the conclave so far and getting a tremendous amount of value out of it. And I also hope to continue that trend with my time with you today. So that was a terrific introduction. As you heard, I'm Kim Curley, and I lead Workforce Readiness Consulting for NTT Data. Our consultants work around the globe with clients in all industries, designing and implementing solutions that align primarily to organizational change management, workforce transformation, and learning and skilling. So we are really, as you just heard, exclusively focused on the human side of business. In case you're not familiar with our company, NTT Data is a global IT consulting firm with more than 130,000 employees around the world in over 50 countries. We're currently the 6th largest IT services provider, and we are part of the NTT group of companies, and we really have innovation at the heart of our culture. I think you'll hear some of that today. So today we're going to talk about the future of work, and more specifically, that the future of work is human. I'll share my point of view from 3 different angles, one of which is the workplace, which is the where we work. The second is the workforce, the messy humans that are you and me. And the third is the work, what us messy humans do. But first, I'd like to share a short video produced by the BBC in 1964 that predicts some of the future of work. So let's follow along. There's a couple of key points there. The world will have shrunk to a point, and man will no longer commute, he will communicate. And while those were predictions for the year 2000, I think the experiment or the changes that Arthur Clarke was talking about are things that we're experiencing today and have experienced as maybe more impactfully or more significantly over the last 18 months. I mean, he's not only describing capabilities that we have in our working lives today, but I think he's also clearly describing how the future of work, both yours and mine, is being created as we speak. I think we're in the midst of a great experiment, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Advances in technology have been putting pressure on how we work, and the impacts of the worldwide pandemic have ramped that pressure up to the point where old worlds are forever broken, frankly. And we're piecing together new models, new ways of working that will better serve both people and organizations across industries, across economies, across countries, and frankly, across all kinds of work. So let's talk about the workplace. There's a lot of talk in the media right now about who is or isn't mandating a return to our offices and when they may or may not demand it. And all of that's really interesting, but upwards of 60% of current employees would strongly consider changing jobs if their current employer mandated that they had to go back to work in an office. Of course, the converse is also true. There are a lot of people who are very anxious to get out of their homes and back into offices. The key here is choice. One of the key motivators for adult humans, you and me, a key driver of productivity and work is autonomy. We like to choose how we get our work done, and we like to choose where and when we get our work done. Arthur said it in the video. When we communicate, there is less need for us to commute. There's a war on talent going on right now that is now being described as the Great Resignation, and we'll talk some more about that as well. Companies who offer choice, who offer their employees autonomy, will be the winners, period. But place still matters, right? Well, yeah, it absolutely still matters, but the workplace isn't a place anymore. The workplace instead is an ecosystem of digital and physical tools that come together to support the needs of the humans in getting their work done in the most efficient and best way possible. For years, we've heard the argument that remote doesn't work. But the sudden jolt to the system sparked by COVID-19 really proved to us that remote does work. And I believe that this protracted experiment has proven that for most people and most jobs, there's little correlation between a supervisor being able to lay eyes on their workers and the actual productivity of that work. Now I think the challenge is to invent the tools that make it easier and better than it is today when we work remotely. We've seen a myriad of new tools hit the marketplace and older tools even being used in new ways. But I think we'll continue to innovate and experiment for a while yet. And while we're on the topic of experimenting, we're entering the great experiment too. How much space is enough in a world where people have a choice about working in an office? What should these spaces that we now call offices look like? And why do people come to those spaces? We've seen companies that have immediately cut their physical space around the world by 50% or more. And we've seen other companies declare that, by golly, they are not giving up a single foot of space. I don't think either one of those is the right answer. I think it'll probably be 3 years, give or take, before we figure out what some of the right answers are. So I think this great experiment is going to take a while for us to figure out what really works financially, what works geographically, and most importantly, what works for us messy humans. The key will be reimagining space as just another tool. So space is a tool like Zoom or a laptop that helps the humans and organizations get their work done. In the past, it may have been a tool for supervision or to facilitate supervision, but in the future, it's a tool to engage employees, to foster culture, and to enable great work. Okay, let's talk about the workforce. So that's you and me out there in the workplace, working for our organizations, getting great work done and creating products and services that the world needs. I mentioned the Great Resignation and how many people are considering making a job shift today. The pandemic and its economic impact have absolutely impacted all of us humans. In the early days, there was so much uncertainty that those who were fortunate enough to have jobs simply stayed. It felt way too risky for most people to consider changing jobs, so all of the natural and normal job turnover that happens in a given year or 2 years, frankly, just stopped. But the pandemic did something else too. It gave us as humans time and a prodding to really consider what was most important to us and what we really want out of our careers and out of our working lives, both as individuals and individual workers, but also as humans and family members and friends and colleagues. So now we face a market where upwards of 40% are actively considering changing their jobs. That is an enormous number. It is driving up the salaries and the rates in the marketplace for talent. And it's also creating a renewed focus in organizations on engaging their current workforces and creating new and innovative ways to stem the tides of attrition. It's I cannot think of a time in my career, which is 30 years and counting, when we've talked so much in the mainstream media about culture and employees and wellness. And that's part of what you're seeing happen right now. The second impact that we have around the workforce, and while COVID did not invent the rise of the gig economy, it is absolutely fueling that growth. We talked earlier about humans' needs for autonomy and how that really is a key driver of motivation in adult humans. Well, I think the gig economy or project-oriented temporary work assignments might be the ultimate expression of that autonomy. The challenge for organizations, of course, is that it creates pressures for us to find new ways of organizing work and workers and new infrastructure to support the workforce. You know, the human capital or HR discipline really hasn't changed a whole lot in terms of infrastructure in many, many years. We still, to a large degree, think of people's employment as hire to retire, as this sort of linear arc over time. But now what we're seeing is something that is not the norm, and certainly not what the newer generations are asking for. Instead, it looks more like a fluid system where people come and go, and where organizations create alliances and partnerships to drive success. Because those alliances and partnerships, which can be more fluid, will really enable better access to the skills that organizations need when they're needed, and to accommodate the needs for continuous upskilling, especially on the digital side. So I think we'll start to see organizations become much more permeable over time. And then the third piece, the autonomy and fluidity that we just talked about, that people that are expressing themselves, is another one of the key drivers of motivation as well. And that's purpose. Well, again, I'll say that two of the key drivers of motivation are autonomy and purpose. Not only are changes in the generations in the workforce today moving purpose to the forefront of the bond that a worker has with its organization, but things that are happening in our world, social issues and challenges and events, are really bringing the conversation to the forefront as well. Increasingly, people want to work for an organization whose vision and values aligned to their own personal values. They want to see that alignment, and they want to see those values in action by the company as well. In essence, there's a new and bigger expectation of a social contract between the worker and the employer. And again, that's another one of the reasons that we are seeing employee engagement, culture, purpose-driven organizations, and topics like that being much more common in mainstream media today. I mean, I think 5 years ago, you probably could have counted on one hand the number of times you saw a Fortune 500 CEO talking about culture. And today, I bet you can't go a single day without seeing multiple CEOs talking about culture. I think that's a really good thing, but it's definitely a significant shift in the workforce. Okay, so let's shift to the work itself. There's a real dichotomy that's being created for the skills that are needed to be successful in the future. On the one hand, we have digital, digital, digital. So it's all about digital skills. I don't need to tell anyone at this conclave, you're all here because of a focus on that. But the half-life of digital skills is now under 3 years for most technologies. So that means that as an individual and as a worker, if you're going to continue to be valuable valued in the marketplace, if you're going to continue to compete, if you're going to continue to have great and interesting work to do, you need to be constantly, almost literally constantly focused on learning the newer skills that you need to learn in the digital space. But on the other hand, it's human, human, human. So as we see the rise of advanced technologies like artificial intelligence and automation, those tools are really driving an increased need in different skills in our workforce. As more and more tasks can be automated or handed off to our robot colleagues, the work left for us as humans becomes much more complex. And the skill sets that we need to conduct that work and be successful in that work are much more complex as well. So now we need more people trained and able to do things like complex problem solving. We need people to be great leaders who can lead with authenticity and transparency in a world where there is a different social contract with the employees. We need skills in the workplace that are about making meaning of the the literally endless amounts of data that we now have available to us in the workplace. So the skill sets are becoming increasingly human. In the old days, we used to call those skills the soft skills. They've always been the skills that drive hard results. They've always been the skills that are the most difficult to train and difficult to learn. And they've always been the most sophisticated skills that we need in the workplace. But we really do see almost a barbell effect. We've got a lot of focus on the digital skills and a real upward swing towards a focus on more sophisticated human skills. So we're going to need to hold both of those sort of in our basket at one time to make sure our organizations are effective and can compete and progress. So where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us with one of my all-time favorite quotes. And it's Alvin Toffler, and he says, "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." And I think that if you had a sentence that sums up what we're dealing with right now, I think that's it. Change is not slowing down. In fact, it's increasing. And frankly, the pace of change and the type of change, the volume of change that we're all dealing with is frankly permanent. We almost need to come up with a new word for change. Change implies there's a steady state and then an alteration of that steady state and then a new steady state. And frankly, that's just not what happens in our world anymore. The analogy I used to use is of whitewater rafting. In whitewater rafting, you get into the water and you might go through periods of rapid where there's very fast moving waters and it's very churned up. It is white water. And then you would come out of those rapids into a smoother section of the river. And you would have a little bit of time to catch your breath before you went into the next section of rapids. We don't have that time to catch our breath anymore. So one of the really important things that we'll have to look at is how do we create learning agility inside our organizations, and how do we create greater resilience or flexibility inside our organizations as well. So when we think about hiring, we need to think not only about the skill sets that we're hiring for, but are the people that we're hiring, do they have a growth mindset? Meaning, will they be able to continuously learn and focus on new skills and new activities and new jobs and tasks as they morph and grow in the organization? Second, we've got to take a look at our organizations as a whole and figure out how do we create increased flexibility and increased resilience inside our organizations so that those organizations can flex and bend and flow instead of break or snap when they are subject to what is pretty significant pressures from the environment. So I think that is our new frontier, is how do we create that learning agility and that organizational resilience. And I think everything we've talked about today sort of builds to that. So with that, I will wrap up and send you all along to the next session in this conclave. I hope you've enjoyed my remarks and I welcome your feedback. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.